Hi, hello. Welcome to this week's episode of What Doesn't Kill You, Gives You Dark Humor and Unhealthy Coping Mechanisms. Yeah, I thought I would talk today about some Scientology programming that I didn't know I had and suddenly showed up in a performance review. So, yeah, I'll try to get into it and I'll try to stay on the point. And if I wonder, that's kind of how I am, so it doesn't matter. Basically, I thought I was like, I knew all my Scientology triggers. I thought I knew, that I could recognize them, and I thought I was kind of over the triggers. But what I didn't realize was there's like programming, like behavioral programming that maybe isn't triggered by one thing, but can be triggered by situations, or in my case, usually stress. And then this like pre-programmed behavior kind of takes over. And yeah, I think that's still some sort of trigger. But the problem is like being aware of that programmed behavior, because if you're not aware of it, then you can't fix it if you want to fix it. And it's kind of hard to spot it on your own. Hi, Telestiger. Hey, nice to see you in here. Okay, so sometimes you have to be in weird or funny situations to realize you're acting on Scientology programming. And this is what happened to me. So if you're new here, I grew up in Scientology. I grew up in their fake military thing called the Sea Organization. And that shaped me growing up in it, and basically gave me a lot of behaviors that I don't think actually are mine. And yeah, I'm practicing learning how to spot them. And okay, so basically my poor boss has to deal with me being ADHD and autistic and ex-Sea Org, ex-Scientologist, PTSD, all the fun stuff. And I had a performance review, and she asked me, so how do you think it's going? And I immediately told her about all the mistakes I'd made recently in my job. Minor mistakes, like I had sent an email meant for one person that had sent it to somebody else, or I had not given a full, complete answer to an email or to somebody's question, stuff like minor things. But she asked me, so how do you think it's going in your job? And I just started listing everything I had done wrong in the past 6 months. And and she kind of laughed, or like was kind of like shocked, like, what is going on? And was like, okay, but Bianca, look at like how much you do at work. And so a lot of my job is about answering emails. That's like almost 80% of my job is answering emails. And she's like, look at how much you do, and you've probably answered like thousands of emails in the past 6 months. And when I asked you how it's going, you literally just listed off the mistakes you've made in the past 6 months. Four mistakes. I had like pulled up the emails and showed her. I was like, look, this person asked this and I wrote this, which is a partial answer and not a complete answer. And then this person, like, that's how it's like for 20 minutes, just showing her time, place, form, and events of the mistakes I had made in my job in the last 6 months. Hi, Miriam. Hi, Irish. Good to see you. Hi, Kelly. And yeah. So that was the first behavior. And then the second behavior was she asked me about a situation I had been in with a coworker kind of recently before this meeting. And she just brought up the coworker's name. And then I immediately got defensive. And I was like, I did everything right. And that coworker did the wrong things. And I can prove it. And here's my proof. And like, I started bringing up the emails showing that. And I started bringing up the company policy showing how I was correct. My poor coworker was in the wrong. And she was just like, okay, I see. And I could tell by the way she was reacting that the way I was answering her questions of how I felt it was going to my job, that I was the weird one. And it took me a while to figure out, what happened. Basically, hi, Haggis Hi, Paralyze. So I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think I found some programmed behavior from specifically the Sea organization. That, of course, there's Scientology involved because the Sea Org is, it's Scientology on steroids. But specifically certain like routines that we had in the Sea organization that had programmed this behavior in me. And now that I've spotted it, I would like to deal with it. So the first one, when she asked me, and you guys remember, this is a performance review. Like, this is what my potential pay raise will be based on. And I was just like, these are all my mistakes. Look at them. So in the Sea organization, we had something every week called a security check. Not a security check, an e-meter check. Basically, in Scientology, hi Hans Christian. Sorry guys, I'm just screaming out. If you guys are watching this on the replay and you don't see the chat, I'm sorry. Basically, in the Sea organization, every week we had an e-meter check. So in Scientology, they have this weird little machine called an e-meter, and it's kind of like a lie detector, but only 1/3 part of a lie detector. And it's supposed to be able to like read your thoughts, right? And so every week we had to go and do an e-meter check, which is basically you go into the little room and there's an ethics officer that's like the police, I guess you could say, in Scientology. And they hand you these cans, the soup cans, and you hold them and they don't say anything. And they just stare at you with the best interrogation face they can muster. And then you just hold those hands and you hope and pray or whatever, you just please let the machine react the way it should. Because if it reacts the way it shouldn't, then that means they're going to start doing interrogations, right? They're going to start asking you, what crimes have you committed? And they're going to tell you, okay, now you have to go and write down all your overts and withholds. OWs is what they call it. And basically, so you're supposed to have like a clean needle, which is just a term for how the needle reacts. And if you have anything but a clean needle, then they're like, oh, you've committed crimes this week. What crimes have you committed? They don't actually say that because it's just an e-meter check. But then you failed because there's always a second ethics officer in the room, a second policeman who, if you failed your e-meter check, grabs you and says, all right, let's go into this little room. And everybody knows that if you're in that little room, you're in trouble. You go into that little room and then you have to sit down and write your overts and withholds, like your sins or your crimes of the week. And if you don't have any, you have to make some up. You have to write some, like you're not leaving that room until you do, right? And when you write those, you write them in a very specific way. You write them time, place, form, and event. You write, this is the time that I did this stupid thing. This is the form, the place. This is where I did it. And then form, like this is how it happened, an event, and what happened around and what happened after. So basically, I had been stressed for a while at work because we had a lot to do and there have been some staff cutbacks. And the long-term not extreme stress, but moderate level of stress had triggered my Sea Org behavior. And so when my boss asked me, how do you think you're doing? I showed her time, place, form, and events of all the mistakes I'd made in the past 6 months. Oh my gosh, hi Samuel. Nice to see you. Hi Kathy. So I'm really glad my boss is patient, and I've told her quite a bit actually about my childhood being in Scientology, so she has patience and so on. Hi Laura Anderson, so nice to see you. But in hindsight, I find it kind of funny. It's kind of hilarious. Okay, the other thing was when I immediately got defensive when she asked me about how it was going, how I was cooperating with this coworker of mine. We don't get along that often. Thankfully, we don't have to interact that often, so that's fine. And I immediately got defensive, and I had brought with me the company policy letters that would back up my defense. And this one is a little bit harder to pinprick because while an e-meter check and writing your overts and withholds, that's in Scientology policy. Even if you're not in the Sea Org, you can be made to do that kind of stuff. But this was more of a cultural thing, I think, specific to the Sea Org, maybe even specific to the organization where I was. But I think it's maybe Sea Org specific. And basically, in the Sea Org, executives do inspections a lot. They'll go around looking at how things are going, and they will pose direct questions, or if they see something that this isn't exactly how it should be, then they'll try to find a culprit. And in the Sea Org, life is hard enough as it is. You don't want to be in trouble. So unless you're doing this thing where you're admitting all your sins or your overts and withholds, unless you're doing that, you're on the defensive as much as possible, and you're going to try to back up why you shouldn't be in trouble with policy. And I feel like that just that kind of kicked in because, yeah, I guess the programming was there. It was old code in the back of my brain somewhere, and these things just kicked in. So yeah, that's it. That's the whole thing. What doesn't kill you gives you weird coping mechanisms and dark humor. I laugh at it now. It's kind of funny. At the time, after the meeting, I felt really bad because it's a performance review, and eventual changes in pay is based on this kind of conversation. But then I was able to talk to my boss after, and I told her maybe I wasn't acting like my authentic self because I've been under stress for a while. And she's very good at understanding, and yeah, we have a good open communication like that. Hi, antics of a mama squirrel. Hi. Okay, so that was my whole story. It's just, sometimes I get tired of talking about Scientology, and sometimes I think I'm done with all my triggers, and then I discover weird programming that's going on that's affecting how I behave, and then I want to get to the bottom of it. And I thought this was maybe a different way to talk about it. All right, let's see if there's anyone in the chat. I see that there's a question here. Hans Christian Schwartz is asking question: when did this start with the weekly meter checks? If you know, it's not my experience, but was out when DM. Oh, okay. So were you in the Sea Org before 1986 when David Miscavige took over running the Sea Org? The weekly meter checks started. I would like to say 1997 at Flag in Clearwater, where I was, probably around 1997. It wasn't already a thing when I had finished the boot camp and was in the Sea Org, at that time, that they only did it like when all the stats were down, like when the main stats, the main statistics of the church were down, then they would do it. But then it became a weekly thing that everybody had to do. I would say 1997 or 1998, maybe, at least where I was a flag. Let's see, you answered it here. You were in the Sea Org from 1977 to 1981. 4 years, yeah. That's approximately how long I was in the Sea Org as well, for almost 5 years, I think. Yeah, cool. That was before I was born. Sorry if I just outed your age. But yeah, no, I think it was a later edition. Like, it wasn't in practice when I first started working in the Sea Org, but it did become a weekly practice. And for me, it was always like the e-meter checks was always like 50-50. I totally believed that the e-meter could read my thoughts, but I also, for the most part, was like, I don't know what I did wrong. Every time it gave a read that was like, oh, you did something wrong. I was like, what did I do? What did I do? And I was quite often like, kind of convinced that I had been such an evil person in an earlier life that was affecting my e-meter checks in this life, because the Scientologists believe in earlier lives and stuff. So it always like threw me a bit through a mind fuck every week. And yeah, and I was always so nervous. And it's not good to be nervous if you're holding the cans of the e-meter, because it kind of does react to like the sweat on your palms and your heart rate and stuff. I don't know. Apparently there are ways to trick the e-meter. I'm pretty sure there are, but I never figured them out. I was just a nervous wreck every time. Okay, I'm going to check for more questions in the chat. I see a lot of people jumping in or have been in here. Everybody saying hi to each other. That's so nice that you guys say hi to each other in the chat. Let's see. Scientology of North Miriam says that's a lot of pointless interrogation. Yeah, it is. And it's really just, to keep you on your toes, I guess. It's kind of like, it makes me think of like thought control, because even if you're not actively doing anything wrong, you feel like you can't even have bad thoughts because it's going to show up on the e-meter. Yeah, they always stress me out. I always got in trouble as well, because for a long time I was in the captain's office, and if I failed my e-meter check, I not only had to got in trouble with ethics and had to sit down and write my overs and withholds. These were also always done on Thursday afternoon, right after 2:00 on Thursday, between Thursday afternoon and staff meeting on Thursday night. And there was a lot of stuff that we had to do in the captain's office at that time. And if I failed my e-meter check and I got dragged into the room to write OWs, then I was supposed to be organizing the executive meetings and stuff, and then I wasn't there, and then I got in double trouble. So yeah, it was very, very stressful for me. So Hags Basher has a question. When it is all you're taught, you're going to believe? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was like all I knew, and I definitely believed it, and I was super scared of the e-meter. This is SV Chef Samuel. This year is a bit like Lord of the Flies. Oh yeah, and you do what you need to do to survive, so you will not be in trouble. Yeah, that's kind of what you do. You avoid trouble as best you can, and you just keep your head down and you try to survive. It's pretty harsh. Someone says, we had the same weekly e-meter checks too. Okay, so, and he was in England in St. Hill, and I was in Florida in the States. Okay. I think everyone was checked who was downstat. Okay, yeah. Yeah, at Flag, everybody had to do it, no matter your statistics, actually. Which also means even if your stats were up, you didn't have ethics protection. So there's a policy that says if your stats are up, ethics, the police department is supposed to protect you so that you, like, nobody can come after you or accuse you of anything. In my experience, I never had ethics protection, no matter what my statistics were. And the only people I saw that benefited from any sort of ethics protection were the registrars, the people who made all the money, who like got in all the money. They were the only ones that I saw had any type of protection when their stats were up. So yeah. All right. Paralyzed question. How many minutes does a clean needle interrogation typically last? So basically the e-meter check, it's like 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Like 1 minute, maybe. If Laura is still in the chat, maybe she can answer this. I think she might know better than me. But yeah, it's really fast, and they don't say anything. They don't ask any questions. They hand you the cans. They say, I think they do like a squeeze test. Squeeze the cans, please. And you squeeze them just so that they can check that it's reacting the way it should. And then they're just silent, and it's two people, and they have their best interrogation face on, and then they just stare at you like, I don't have an interrogation face, sorry. And then you just wait, and then they'll either say thank you, or like if you have a floating needle, I guess they'll say thank you, your needle's floating, but then they'll just say thank you, and then you'll know if the one that's standing behind the one operating the e-meter, if they come up and grab you or not, if you passed or not. So kind of very stressful, really fast, but high stress. Hi, Windy City Thetan Watch. Nice to see you. And Hans Christian Rohr says, a bit like the examiner. Yeah, kind of almost exactly like the examiner. So in Scientology, after you do a session, an auditing session, which is their form of spiritual counseling, you always have to do the session until your needle is floating, which is this the specific movement on the e-meter's needle. And then after your session, you have to go to the examiner, who is not an auditor, and you do the same thing. They just hand you the cans, and then they say, thank you, your needle's floating, which means you passed. Or if they say thank you and not say your needle's floating, then you have to go back in session. Or the folder has to be looked at, and then you have to go back in session. Yeah, it's pretty fast. And it's quite like an examiner. And Samuel agrees. Yes, exactly. That's how I recall it too. All right. It looks like I got all the questions. I hope I said hi to everybody. If I missed you, I'm sorry. Hi. And hello to everybody on the replay. Yeah, that's really all I had to say on that. I am glad that I discovered that I have this weird old Scientology code in the back of my brain, because now that I know it's there, I can work on removing it, and programming over it with better, healthier behaviors. If you guys have anything else, any topics you would like me to talk about, just put it in the chat on the video afterwards, but I'm going to end the live stream here and go do something fun because it's Friday night. Hi, Kathy. All right. Thanks, guys, so much for listening. And yeah, have a good Friday night, Friday morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is. Bye-bye.